Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clark Art Talks. I'm Kendra Larson, and today we are very lucky to have Demian Dinéyazhi join us. Demian is a Native American artist and activist. Their work and advocacy focuses on indigenous and LGBTQ plus people and consists of photography, sculpture, text, sound, video, land art, performance, installation, street art, and fabrics arts. Demian, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Demian Dinéyazhi. I'm born to the clans Nastaje, Tabahe, and Totochini of the Dine tribe. Um, I currently live in Portland, Oregon, which is also the ancestral lands of various indigenous tribes, as well as, a trading grounds for various people who have moved through the region, including various bands of Chinook, Kalapuya, Clackamas. I'm missing a whole slew of other indigenous tribes in the region. I do apologize. Brain is kind of like mush at the moment. I'm originally from Gallup, New Mexico, and my family is from Chinle, Arizona, which is located on the Navajo Nation reservation, otherwise known as Dine. I want to thank you all for the invitation to speak a little bit more about my work and practice, to give some background and context. So with that in mind, is it possible to kind of like share my screen? Not kind of, sorry. Is it possible to just do that?
Yeah, I made you a co-host, so if you go down to the bottom green button, it says
Okay,
share
wonderful.
screen.
There we go. Oh, darn it. It was up, wasn't it, for a second?
Yeah, for a second.
Okay, let me see. Where did it go? Sorry, I don't know what happened. Okay, there we go. Okay. So I've had difficulty doing this before. When I go to the slideshow, it kind of just um, is that popping up right now? Is it just a black screen?
We see your slideshow.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Or we see the screen. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just go back a little bit. I apologize. Um, okay, yeah, so the work that I currently have in the Stone Path is all sort of relating to 2020. Um, my work is like implements a transdisciplinary practice. Um, by that, I'm kind of, thinking about the ways that I can work in a multidisciplinary way. The way that I came into creating artwork was largely driven by photography and poetry, and writing. I was really interested in like feminism and queer theory, zine culture, Riot Girl, which is how I ended up in Portland. Um, and growing up in Gallup, New Mexico, growing up in New Mexico in general, it's a very patriarchal, Catholic influenced, and I guess to some extent like colonized region. So I was also growing up like in the mid 90s, right around the turn of the century. So there was like a lot of, there was a lot of like curiosity about the internet. and how we were starting to like find ourselves within these spaces, also finding each other in these spaces. And there were chat rooms, which was like the main mode of communication, and the main ways that like I actually gained any type of like ability to speak with other like queer people outside of Gallup, New Mexico. Um, so I became really interested in figuring out ways to like shape my identity as like a queer person. um and I think a lot of what I was aware of, or um what I eventually became aware of, a lot of these modes of a lot of these like social settings that queer culture had at that time, gay and lesbian bookstores or whatever, they're they're not as like vibrant in our communities. Um, and so, but growing up in Gallup, I didn't even have that. There wasn't really an option for like a gay and lesbian bookstore. Um, so I became really fascinated at some point in like zine culture and Riot Girl, and thinking about what it means to, create community. Um, and then I saw just the way that other artists were doing it through their artwork. Um, so anyway, yeah, a lot of my work, I think, is still relies heavily on like this photographic thread, and utilizes words and text as a material substance that adds more um, conceptual weight to a piece, informs the viewer, interjects and um, interjects and just thinks about language and in in an interrogative manner. So a lot of the work that was shown in the Stone Path exhibition was and is like very text heavy, and it's referring to the time period of 2020. And so this is one of the pieces that I created around this time period. And it's just, taking a photograph, walking around Portland, thinking about a lot of social protest that was happening, calls for community care, mutual aid efforts, and particularly, in regards to the pandemic and growing social unrest regarding Black Lives Matter. And so, I think a lot of activists, at least in my community, and a lot of people in my community were really interested in thinking about this time period as a potential portal, like leading folks into thinking about, how we come together, um, how we help each other survive, in like these very humane, humble, and respectful ways. As we would, come to find out, like weeks later, months later, that was not the attitude shared by a large population of people who reside in the United States. So from there, I was also having a really difficult time thinking about like what it meant to make artwork during this time. I was applying for grants, trying to get funding, trying to figure out just how to sustain my career as an artist. A lot of the opportunities that I had at the time just completely went away. They were either canceled or they were postponed indefinitely. And one of these opportunities was a residency that I was invited to participate in at the independent um, uh, the independent studio and curatorial program, I believe is what it's called, the ISCP in Brooklyn, New York. And so I, was invited to go out to do this residency with them. And it was right in this like area of Black Lives Matter being on like Minneapolis and um, New York and various other parts of the country. Um, right before I left, like, they had like a Black Trans Lives Matter um, protest and gathering in Brooklyn. And uh, when I got to New York, I was expecting to have this similar type of energy, like to be able to go there and like contribute and show up, to be a body like amongst many. But when I got there, a lot of that energy had like changed for whatever reason. I think a lot of it had to do with like infighting and um, you know, uh, other strategies to break up political momentum. Um, but shortly right after I got there, that, a lot of the national attention then went to Portland. Um, so all of a sudden I saw all these like protests on my phone of like all this like momentum just like accumulating in Portland. So it was a really weird time to be longing for this type of community, these types of conversations, like showing up. Um, but then also being displaced from it at the same time. Um, and trying to think about and find the space to think about like what it means to be an artist, what it means to create work right now. And I just couldn't figure out like what it meant to make anything that was um I guess maybe leading off of like where I was at prior to the pandemic. So a lot of my work again, like deals with transdisciplinary practices. And with that, I'm also thinking about the different ways of interrogating, deconstructing, and subverting colonial spaces. And of course, I think of, art galleries and art institutions, organizations, collectors, and whatnot, are complicit within this ongoing settler colonial narrative, um, and infrastructure throughout the arts. And around the same time, a lot of institutions and organizations, nonprofits were putting out these solidarity statements that were saying, we stand with Black Lives Matter, we stand for social injustice. And so I started thinking about, what does a banner mean? Like in the street, what does a banner, what do these solidarity statements mean in the streets within political action? Why are they issuing these statements and not, changing or handing over like all these resources to communities of color? And so the only way that I could really, I think at this time, think about what it meant to make artwork was to also simultaneously challenge art spaces and art galleries. So I began painting these banners while I was in residency. Initially, they were for the purpose that, I could ship them off to a protest and have other people use them, just, donate and contribute energy and aesthetics to the Black Lives Matter movement and calls for police abolition. But at the same time, I was still really bothered by the fact that our institutions were handing out these blanket statements, solidarity statements that um, for the most part were didn't really offer any sort of like physical change or solutions. So as I started painting the banner, I started to think about like, well, what would it mean if I allowed the art gallery to show these pieces? I one thing that I came up with was thinking about in showing these pieces that, if anyone wanted to check them out for a protest or demonstration, that they would be allowed to. And so the art gallery would allow them to check it out and then bring it back in whatever condition that it was in. Um, but as the years progress and months progress after I finished up the residency, um, no spaces reached out to even show this work. And so it wasn't until this exhibition, um, the Stone Path, where I was able to put this work up on the walls. So yeah, I thank you all for showing the work, for wanting to engage in the conversation and maintain integrity and allowing artists to practice our right of free speech. Unfortunately, when this piece was first shown at the Chehalem Cultural Center, the piece was taken down without my consent, without my consultation. I was just notified pretty much, a few days after it had gone up that the um, director at the museum, who has never reached out to have a conversation with me, had decided to take it down. And so, there's been this huge gap in like any sort of like conversation about this piece. Um,
Hey, Demian.
yes.
Um, do you want to push? Oh, I cannot talk today. So sorry. Do you want
Oh,
to
that's
show the piece
fine.
you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah, did
Do
it
you want to?
freeze?
It's stuck on the first slide. So
Oh,
did
no worries.
okay.
I don't know what's happening. It says it's paused.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, so this is what happens.
Oh, it's weird. If
Okay.
can you move? Oh, okay. Yeah, if
So,
you can,
okay. This is
if
what I
you.
think this is just what I have to do. Because you can see this now, right?
Oh, now we can see it move. Yeah, now we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, I'm just gonna have to do this, and I apologize. Um, Ignore all my my messy desktop. Um, so yeah, so this is the piece that I'm talking about, the banner that is in the show, defund the police, decolonize the street. At the same time, I created this piece, this other banner, which was based off of a song written by um, uh, this now called out Pretendian uh, indigenous musician, Buffy St. Marie. The song that she wrote was titled My Country, 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying. It was written in the 60s, and it is a very telling folk protest song about the genocide of indigenous peoples, and the complacency of U.S. citizens in accepting falsified histories of settler colonialism. And but since the last few weeks or whatever, she's been called out, so I've had to like rethink what this piece means, what the relationship with it means, if there's any sort of way to like resurrect its messages um, through it. I still think that it's important to show within this context, especially in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. When I was creating this piece, it was toward the end of the residency, and I was having this, I went through most of the residency just being like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why am I here? Why am I making art? Like, I should be in Portland. I should be somewhere else. So it took me like, a few weeks before I even came to the realization that like, oh, this is what I should be doing here. Like, this is how I can be contributing right now. And so that first banner was created first, and then this second banner was created afterward. And it was very rushed. I was just messing around with some of the yellow paint in the background, and then I started to, create the top layer text space, which was initially supposed to read, "My country, 'tis of thy people you're dying." In the middle of me trying to figure this out, um, uh, there was someone at the residency had been exposed to COVID, and so the whole residency at that point shut down, um, leaving this piece in its current state unfinished. And so I just packed everything up and headed back to Portland. And by that point, I think a lot of the energy from the Black Lives Matter movement in Portland was starting to level out. A lot of that initial sort of spark was, effectively being put out, unfortunately. So, this that whole time period was really weird. Like it took me a while to really figure out like what it meant to make work. It wasn't until this exhibition came up last year, back in 2022, where I started to reassemble a lot of the language from 2020 as a way to, honor that time period and a lot of the intellectual, spiritual, and hopeful energy that a lot of communities had um, and continue to have, but also as a way to like simultaneously remind people that the types of like revolutionary hope that is out there is an ongoing process. It's like a prayer. It's a continual energy that needs to be fed. So I created this piece, which is a really large panel that is just an assemblage of various texts and photographs, pretty much taken from 2020. And the piece is titled Emerging Creation Story. It reads, the creation story is always emerging. We are writing it now. In collective fury, it is restored. In rebellion, it is restored. In decolonization, it is restored. In beauty, it is restored. We can imagine and create a better world. And this is just an installation view of it at an exhibition in Idlewild Arts titled Looking at Us, Examining Institutional Critique. This is another piece I created for the same exhibition. This piece reads, art spaces are currently failing artists by forcing us to participate in the same toxic game that existed prior to the pandemic, without asking us what we need to survive and resume productivity. They wrote solidarity statements to ensure their survival, yet nothing has changed. The modes of production are just as exhausting, debilitating, depressing, demanding, and unnecessary. I want to believe that the future worlds we thought were possible 2 years ago are still worthwhile objectives that demand our care, attention, and fury. I want us all to remember that glorious energy that helped us survive dark times. I want us all to continue fighting for all the brilliant futures that defy the current extractive conditions that fuel contemporary art. I want to believe that these things still matter as we go along murmuring the chorus to the same old song, depleted, disenchanted, jaded, and heartbroken. I want you all to remember that there were artists who questioned these times and demanded more than praise, representation, inclusion, solidarity statements, or land acknowledgements. And so this is just an installation view of that outside Idlewild Arts College. I'm just going to skip over some of this stuff for now. I apologize. Yeah, so this has led me into thinking about institutional critique and ongoing institutional critique, which is where my current work is situated. Again, it's thinking about our institutions as ongoing sites of colonial violence and erasure. I think this is really an important thing to be speaking about, especially right now, as many artists are having their shows like completely canceled, being shadow banned from social media, having opportunities canceled, or even having their entire careers questioned by those in the arts. I've heard people say that collectors are threatening artists by flooding the market to basically destroy their careers for speaking out against humanitarian injustices in Gaza. Even for just having solidarity with Palestinian people and calling for a ceasefire and being against basic genocide. So I think these are very important issues to be bringing up right now. especially having, have had my work, which is in the show, censored and taken down, within like the last 6 months. So I'm continuing to have these conversations through my artwork. This piece reads, "There's a future world where we thrive without MoMA, the Met, the Whitney, New Museum, Crystal Bridges, or same old song art institutions. There's a future world where we succeed without needing gallery representation. There's a future world where our creative practices are respected and nurtured. There's a future world where our traumas, radical ideologies, and resilient ancestral fires are honored and not exploited. As artists, it is important as ever to question our role and function in institutional spaces. It is important as ever to question the future of institutions, organizations, or nonprofits in our communities. It is important as ever to question the gatekeepers and bureaucratic processes that assert invented power and authority over what is considered valuable, archivable, collectible, exhibitable, or worthy of funding. It is important as ever to challenge galleries in our communities that appropriate our strategies and radical ideologies, yet do not align with the futures we need in order to survive and thrive beyond this simulation. It is important as ever to ask for what we need and demand that our requests are met with respect, gratitude, support, and justice. Institutions are extractive industries. So yeah, this whole work exists in an ongoing and growing body of work I'm working on now, titled Extractive Industries. Institutions are extractive industries. They extract and accumulate stolen, appropriated, and co-opted forms of knowledge, wisdom, time, language, and political, creative, and BIPOC ideologies without proper reparations, solidarity, or non-colonial exchanges of gratitude. We are not indebted to institutions. We do not owe them our allegiance. Just because they have exhibited our work does not mean they should ever be exempt from critique. Their power exists as a result of centuries of religious, heteropatriarchal, colonial, and capitalist conquest that is oftentimes still reflected in their leadership, board of directors, and bureaucratic processes. Their relevance is determined by our subjugation, compliance, and exploitation. Their legitimacy is dependent on our validation. Their future is determined by our solidarity with one another and our calls to dismantle their legacies of extractive capitalist addiction. So, I was having a really hard time thinking about what it means to create work. A lot of the work that I was creating was being pushed through social media. I wasn't actually creating things that were physical. So it wasn't until last year when I realized, when I did want to continue working with institutions and maintaining this critique within those spaces, that I realized that it's actually beneficial for me to, maybe take all of that, all of the work that I'm doing through social media, Instagram stories, Instagram posts, Photoshop, whatever, it becomes necessary for me to take all of that and actually turn it into physical artwork that could then be shown in these institutions. As I use Instagram stories, or the ways that I use Instagram stories and social media, I think is a present day version of these like letterpress and printmaking histories. The ways that we're able to put out content in a matter of 5-10 minutes is continuing in this legacy of mass distributing knowledge, zines, pamphlets, posters, broadsides to communities. So I went back and wanted to then have this conversation through letterpress prints. And Stello Arts in downtown Portland and Colton, Oregon, were supportive of this entire process as well. So these three, I've had three prints, three letterpress prints that were part of this letterpress series that I had at Stello. And I believe those three prints are also on exhibit in this exhibition. One of them reads, imagine the work we could create if we have the material, administrative, and financial support that others are offered because the art market has deemed their work profitable and worthy enough to collect and archive. Another print reads, if you are going back to your capitalist, racist, ableist, heterosis normative, and classist ways, and not asking or providing us with what we need to create, survive, and uplift our communities without getting something in return, then you can burn your statements of solidarity. And lastly, this is one of my latest piece that I created, which is a large neon sculpture sign from the Extractive Industry series. It reads, we deserve dignity over solidarity. We deserve survival over statements. We demand resources over acknowledgements. This piece was created with the support of Light Bright Neon, but also the Brooklyn Art Museum, and is currently on exhibit in the Brooklyn Art Museum in the exhibition Copy Machine Manifestos, Artists Who Make Zines. So this, again, is referencing social media. The original story sketch that I created and never posted is shown here on the left. It's just a picture of the sky. And the text reads, we demand dignity over solidarity. We demand survival over statements. We demand resources over acknowledgements. And then there's like a blue line grid to center that statement with a more right alignment. And then on the right image, you see the installation of the piece at the Brooklyn Museum with the altar text that has changed from, these statements that say we demand, we demand, we demand, to we deserve, we desire, we demand. Again, thinking about, what the actual needs are for the community. And thinking about solidarity statements and thinking about what it means to be an accomplice and ally, there's this underlying thread, I think, of actual awareness of the need for dignity amongst people who are subjugated and oppressed. And so, in putting out these statements, like, it's also important to be aware and considerate enough to realize that the people that you are aligning with, that you are in solidarity with, also deserve dignity on a daily basis. They deserve dignity on the streets, in their homes, in their workplace. And I think that's one thing that is largely lacking from solidarity statements, is the awareness of day-to-day individuals. The other lines read, we deserve survival over statements. A solidarity statement doesn't guarantee our survival. It prolongs the survival of institutions and organizations and nonprofits. And I believe that a lot of these statements actually went out as a way to distract, protest communities from coming for institutions, especially as a lot of monuments were being toppled. It was a way for them to cleverly camouflage themselves from, being pushed into the Hudson River or the Willamette River. A lot of these statements don't actually care about our survival. They're not actually invested in what it means for an artist to survive, what it means for a community to survive. They're interested in productivity. There were very few places during the pandemic that actually provided me with support without having to put something else out there in return. And that's the case with a lot of art careers in general. And particularly being a part of an art gallery, they get 50% of the profit. They, take care of your work to a degree, but like, their main mode of operation is suspect. Very few artists who are a part of galleries or have gallery representation right now are speaking out. And I think a lot of them fear speaking out because they'll lose that representation. They'll lose, you know, their own financial support basis. And the last line says, "We demand resources over acknowledgements," referencing land acknowledgements, of course, and thinking about what does it mean to give a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements from institutions are appropriated from indigenous communities. A lot of the first land acknowledgements that went out were from indigenous communities, from indigenous peoples who had gone into these spaces, indigenous or BIPOC communities who were going into spaces and basically saying, we are gathering on occupied, stolen indigenous land. We are guests. We are unwelcome guests in these spaces. But then, the institution sees that and further on down the line begins to appropriate that, begins to use that, and thereby, gaining more sort of like social clout as a result of giving a land acknowledgement. I think it's a false, it's just a facade of trust as a way to Trojan horse and bring in their own purposes into BIPOC communities and indigenous communities. So this last statement, we demand resources, is basically saying, if you're going to give these acknowledgements, where are the resources? Where's the labor? Like, what are you doing to actually give back to indigenous people? A lot of organizations and institutions will give a land acknowledgement, but it's like, what are your long-term trajectories of helping indigenous communities in this region, in your region, get land back, have basic needs like water? And so, what are you doing to actually bring indigenous people in here and even just training them to be in these positions of influence? A lot of these art galleries and institutions that give out land acknowledgements don't have indigenous people on the staff, don't have indigenous curators, don't have indigenous people on the board, are not run by indigenous, directors. So this piece really, I think, challenges what it means to put out these statements, and is hopefully trying to remind people that there is so much more humanity that we need to be tapping into right now, than settling for the bare minimum. So anyway, yeah, I'm kind of going to wrap off at that point. It's been about 45 minutes. But yeah, did you want to leave anything open for questions, or
Yeah.
didn't have any comments?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I have a few questions, but I think other people might too. So let's check. If anybody has a question, you're welcome to ask it, or if you feel more comfortable writing it in the chat, I'm happy to read them. Okay. Okay. I'm going back here. Okay. Oh yeah, that's a lot, Vicente. Vicente, do you wanna ask these questions? Or do you want me to read it? Okay.
I can read it. Oh yeah, go ahead, maybe. Sorry.
I think I think Vicente just wants some more details, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, the director didn't really give, well, sorry, the director didn't give their reasons to me specifically. I think their concerns were around um staff safety. And the Chehalem Art Center is located in Newburgh. Um, and Newburgh is a fairly conservative suburb of Portland. Um, and so, I think a lot of their reasoning their reasoning was that they were concerned for staff safety, and local community members retaliating, and seeing defund the police, decolonize the street. So I think that was their sort of initial reason for removing it. Um, I'm not exactly sure. Again, I never had a conversation with them. The curators from the Stone Path um, had shown the director the work that was going up initially, and everything seemed good and fine until it was actually up on the wall. Um, and so at that point, it became a little bit more, um, like everything started to like come to the surface a little bit more, tension grew and everything. Um, and so yeah, we just decided to remove that piece, or they decided to remove that piece without my concern. Um, yes, safety is definitely a reason, but a lot of the times our institutions will say this as a way to escape actually giving the real reason why. So it's I don't know. Yeah, I don't I wasn't completely convinced by that reason. And then consider can let me read these other pieces, these other two comments. How do the concepts of deserving, desiring, and demanding contribute to community welfare, and what specific resources are being sought through these expressions? Resources encompass a diverse array of valuable assets and provisions that aid in fulfilling communal needs and aspirations. Yeah, I mean, I think it changes obviously from community to community. And it's the concerns of what those communities need. I think at the basis of it, there needs to be some sort of consultation with indigenous peoples, with indigenous tribes, depending on the region as well. Having input from Latin, Black, Asian, diasporic, Pacific Islander, queer, trans communities is also essential. And so yeah, I also think the types of resources that are needed at this point are financial, our space, are about needing some type of security in this like chaotic world that we're living in. So if you look at what's happening now in Portland or in other cities, like multiple other cities around the country, like it's not just Portland. Portland gets pushed by the media for being this like reckless leftist place. But these cities like Portland have existed for decades. Cities like Portland have been neglected for decades. It's just in terms of the falsehoods of media on a mission to have its own agenda pushed to the forefront. But you see what's happening in Portland, and just a lack of resources that are available from the city in order to help the drug crisis that is unfolding, to help even with the houseless crisis that is unfolding. There are methods and ways of addressing these concerns implementing any type of social programs in the community. There were small houses that were put up that were helping people find some sort of stability. And after the pandemic and start some of these um, community care and mutual aid efforts started to like go away, and um, yeah, a lot of these small houses were just taken away from individuals. There's no sort of like ongoing commitment to actually help um, um, restore any the community, the fabric of the community. Um, so and this goes into, I think, your next question, which I think is a little more difficult to answer. How does this contrast with the individuals expressing support for funding law enforcement? Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused by this question. Um, yeah, when I was mentioning artists being silenced, it wasn't specific to Portland. Um, Currently, I mean, Ai Weiwei, um, well, I mean, if you drive, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. This is, I'll briefly just answer this, and then maybe we can go on to another question, just to open it up for other
Yeah.
people who might have something to say. Um, I mean, graffiti gets covered all the time. There's a large amount of graffiti that gets covered up. There's stickers that get pulled down. There's other types of propaganda that get put up in its place. There's more protection for billboards and corporation than there are for artistic expression. Um, but I'm speaking about censorship from other artists, even internationally stable and prominent artists like Ai Weiwei, who tries to insert some sort of like commentary about the situation that's unfolding in Gaza, and has had 3 shows canceled. Another artist, On Duplan, has had their work taken, another opportunity of theirs taken away because they just expressed support for Palestinian solidarity. Um, and yeah, there's various people in positions around the country who are coming face to face with that. I don't know specifically what the situation is like in Portland. I haven't heard much from people as I've built this work and continued to build this work. I've had support, which is really wonderful and feels good. Um, but with the exception being the Chehalem Cultural Center, um, which was just the shit show in and of itself. This, and I like actually really do appreciate being able to like wrap my head around that and have that conversation. So thank you for those questions.
I kind of have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a few different topics going on in your work, and specifically in the Stone Path, there's a few different things you're talking about. But I think the through line seems to be about institutions and the freedom of speech. Um, are there, I mean, you mentioned it briefly, but are there institutions that are doing things, uh, are are taking steps in the right direction? Are there examples that we could all be looking towards?
I'm right now, I mean, that's really hard. Stello Arts has been really supportive through the last few years, like extremely supportive. Like they've been wonderful. Cooley Arts gallery, namely Stephanie Snyder, I think is doing some interesting work. And then I'm trying to think around the country, like what is happening. It's really, I mean, that's really difficult to say because a lot of institutions right now are just keeping their mouths shut and like not saying much. The Poetry Project is doing some really cool work. When that's out in New York City. Wendy Subway, again, another publishing space, doing some work and really wanting to like step up and support artists in their free speech, in their rights to free speech. But it's really, I mean, that's a really hard question because like it's so uncertain right now. The Brooklyn Museum put out, a statement of ceasefire and I believe solidarity, and that upset some of their board members, and some of those board members left. So it's just a really divisive time period, and it's really kind of daunting to think about like what the next few years in the arts will look like, and what artistic freedom will look like, even in just being able to say certain words on Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram, is now being used in a very strategic and like backwards way, to incite more division. So I don't know. That's a hard question. I didn't, when I put this piece up on the wall, like I did realize that its political nature, but I didn't expect any of it to go down as it had. The piece that brought my work into the show was a piece. I don't have it up. I'm really sorry, but it's a lithographic print that's titled "No Place Like Huzhou," that was made at Crow Shadow, on a residency back in like 2018, 26. I forget what year it was, but it's an older piece, and it's a piece about my indigenous heritage, about feeling displaced, about wanting to reconnect to a place. There's a photograph of a traditional Dine Navajo hogan. And it just reads, there's no place like Huzhou. There's no place like Huzhou. And Huzhou, within like a Dine like philosophical understanding, is like being in balance with like yourself and the world and the community around you. It's about like this restorative healing aspect. And so that was the work that brought all of this into the exhibition space. This is that work and these concepts of like balance and repair and joy and harmony, is also embedded into critiques of settler colonialism and the work that I make. I know, a lot of people take issue with it, but like it's about providing safety for everyone. I mean, it's a little uncomfortable to unpack the ways that we've all been brainwashed and manipulated into celebrating colonial atrocities, even just within our own country, and allegiance to it, for us to sustain ourselves as communities. First and foremost, we have that right. It isn't something that is deemed by the state. It's something that is deemed so much more deeper than that. It's a cosmological right to exist. And right now that is being challenged. And right now we are put into positions where we have to consider what it means to even speak out against that. So, I hope this work at least engages that conversation and helps people to come into a place where we're able to restore any type of humanity that we have, both within the arts, but also within ourselves and in our communities.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And are there any last minute questions, anybody? Thank you so much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all.
Yeah. And yeah, everyone come down and check out the show at the Archer Gallery. Thank you so much, Demian.
Yeah, thank y'all. Have a good day.
Thank you.